Frausto with the knee. Oh, Sexton is out. Oh, Pennington is throwing some leather tonight. Jessica Eye with a standing arm triangle. Rousey is already going for the arm. Tate got blocked. McMahon has some power in that right hand.
You are listening to the Women Throwing Leather podcast with your host, D. Allen. Hey guys, I'm D. Allen, and thanks for listening to the Women Throwing Leather podcast. So, the subject of this podcast is the return of one of my favorite female fighters to mixed martial arts. It's just a matter of time, and she's going to be in the UFC. She belongs in the UFC, and I'm going to detail why she belongs in the UFC. But first, I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for listening to my second podcast that I've done for Women Throwing Leather. I'm going to start doing these a lot more frequently. Thank you for listening in. So let's get into it. I've been watching her for a while since she was in, back in the day when she was in Bellator and, actually won the championship for a Bellator tournament. And then she moved to Muay Thai, and I watched her, fight in Muay Thai for WCK Muay Thai, I think is the promotion she was in. So she's been away from mixed martial arts for a couple of years. Her last fight was in 2013, and so it's been a while since she actually fought MMA. And she's actually returning this Friday to fight for RFA 31 in Las Vegas. And it's fitting for her return because this fight on Friday that she is returning for with RFA 31 is for a world title. Like I said before, I've been a fan of hers since her days in the Bellator promotion, and then she moved on to Invicta FC or Invicta Fighting Championships. She's been out of MMA for a couple of years, so a lot of people have kind of forgot about her. They forgot who she was and forgot all about her. And not many people remember her. And the fans that are new to MMA, especially women's MMA, mixed martial arts, they may not know who she is. And that's why I'm doing this podcast, because I'm a fan of hers. I talk to her every now and then, just on Instagram. I've done a couple of posters for her just because I'm a fan, so it's fan art, essentially. So she's made a couple of comments back to me on Instagram, which is kind of cool. She seems like she's just an amazing person. I would love to meet her someday. But I'm a fan because I think she's incredibly skilled as a fighter. So once again, she will be making her return tomorrow night, October 9th at RFA 31 in Las Vegas. And like I said before, it's fitting because her return is yet for another title. It's yet for another title fight for the women's strawweight world title. Now, before I tell you who I'm talking about, let me kind of run down some of her accomplishments because they are very impressive. Now, in 2010, she entered the Bellator strawweight tournament along with 8 of the top female fighters in women's mixed martial arts, including the number 1 strawweight in the world, Megumi Fujii. Now, at the time, Megumi Fujii was ranked pound for pound the number 1 strawweight in the world. And this tournament was to crown the first ever world strawweight champion. So granted, Megumi Fujii entered it. She was highly favored to win the tournament. She was the best in the world. And most of the fighters that entered that tournament, there was only 8, are now in the UFC. So that kind of tells you the kind of caliber of fighters that entered that tournament. Fighters like Jessica Penne, Jessica Aguilar, Lisa Ellis Ward, Carla Esparza. Carla Esparza, actually, who went on to become the Invicta strawweight champion, she replaced Angela Magana. So Angela Magana got injured, and so Carla replaced her. In that tournament, 8 women entered the tournament, and one by one they had an elimination, and it came down to the fighter I'm talking about and Megumi Fujii, the number 1 fighter in the world. So the fighter I'm talking about, who's returning to MMA after a 2-year, I guess you could call it a hiatus, she went on to beat Megumi Fujii to become the first and only Bellator women's strawweight world champion. Nobody else on the planet, and literally, if you think about this, nobody else on the planet can claim that title. How individual is that? That's an amazing accomplishment to be able to say, hey, I'm the only person of all the people on the planet, I'm the only person that can claim that I'm the first and only Bellator women's strawweight champion. She was the first to ever. I mean, no one will ever take that away from her. I mean, I think about that, and that's an incredible accomplishment. And that's what I get such mad respect for her. Because if seriously, take some time and think about what that means. I mean, it's an amazing accomplishment. So, because she beat Megumi Fujii, technically, at that time, she became the number one fighter in the world because she beat the number one ranked strawweight in the world. So, as they say, to be the best, you have to beat the best. And in 2010, on that night, the person I'm talking about, she became the best in the world because she beat the best in the world. I'm going to be honest, I'm getting teary-eyed just thinking about it because, I mean, it's an amazing accomplishment. What a night that she became the best in the world. Anyway, think about that. It's just an amazing accomplishment. And that's why I love this person as a fighter. I love her as a human being. I love her personality. I don't know her, obviously, personally, but just from what I've seen in her interviews and whatnot, what is whatnot? People always say that. And whatnot, what does that mean? I don't know what whatnot means. Maybe it's a town in Kansas. Anyway, so without further ado, I'll tell you right now, who is this multi-decorated world champion that I am speaking of? Of course, I'm talking about ZOILA, Warrior Princess Frausto. So her last MMA fight was in 2013, which was a loss to Vanessa Porto at Invicta 7. Now, after that fight, she left MMA with a 3-fight losing streak at that time. You know, where's she been in these 2 years? So she was going through some personal stuff. You know, she stepped away. She wanted to try Muay Thai. She had never done that, so she thought she'd try it. What did she do? She succeeded at Muay Thai. She picked up 2 more titles. She won the IKKC Muay Thai world title and a WBC national title. So it's clear to see anywhere she goes, she just kills it. She crushes it. So like I said before, it's just a matter of time, and she'll be in the UFC. I personally am going to do whatever I can via social media, bugging Dana White, for him to sign her, because she really belongs in the UFC. And if you keep listening, you understand why. So just take all that in, what I just said, you know, about all of her accomplishments, all of her titles, what she accomplished back in 2010 during that tournament, which if you haven't seen it, if you're a fan of women's mixed martial arts, or just a fan of mixed martial arts in general, go back and watch that tournament. A lot of the fights are on YouTube, because it was 2010, so it's 5 years ago. But go back and watch that tournament. I mean, some of those fights are incredible. People who say women can't throw down, you are sadly mistaken, because you need to watch those fights. Even just aside from ZOILA, the performance from Jessica Aguilar, or Carla Esparza, or Megumi Fujii, just incredible performances from that whole tournament. So let's backtrack and take a look at her fightography, if you will. Kind of give you some background on ZOILA. If you're not familiar with her, I'm going to school you in the Warrior Princess right now. If you watch her last 2 fights, which happened during her time at Invicta, and compare it to her fights during her Bellator days, it's clearly evident she was not the same person. So once again, comparing her fights at Invicta with Jennifer Maia and Vanessa Porto to her days back in Bellator, fighting, the likes of Jessica Penne, Jessica Aguilar, Megumi Fujii, it's clearly evident that's 2 different people. Because looking at those fights when she lost at Invicta to Vanessa Porto and Jennifer Maia. I think in some interviews she had mentioned she was going through some personal stuff. In so many words, her head just wasn't in the game. It wasn't her. And even after her loss to Jennifer Maia, I think the interview she said, that just wasn't me. That's not how I fight. And I agree with that. Like I said, you watch her at Bellator, she's an animal. I mean, she's an amazing fighter. Then you look at her Invicta and she's just not in it. That's just not her. I mean, that's not a true showing of what she can do or what she's capable of. That just was not a true display. It was not a complete performance from her. So, the stuff that she was going through in her personal life, and it clearly affected her performance. Because, honestly, in my opinion, when she fought Vanessa Porto and Jennifer Maia, she shouldn't have lost those fights. Because she's better than that. I mean, I've seen her fight better than that. That wasn't her. It's almost like her heart wasn't in it. And she probably would agree with me in that. I took karate when I was a kid. I went through Taekwondo, and I never reached a black belt, but I got pretty high. So, I was into mixed martial martial arts, and I was a big fan of ninjutsu, and I studied that for a while. And, there's the physical aspect of mixed martial arts, but in mixed martial arts, they teach you there's also a psychological aspect of it, especially in the Chinese arts, the wushu, the kung fu, and some of the Chinese, mixed martial arts. They teach you there's a psychological aspect, there's a spiritual aspect of it. So you can have all the physical, technical, everything down and be a technically 100% fighter. If your heart's not in it, and if your mind's not in it, you've already defeated before you enter the cage. And I've even heard Raquel Pennington, I think, say that, in one of her fights, that she beat herself before she even got in the cage. She beat herself in her mind. And so that's the other side of it, is that you can tell if someone's just not in it. I mean, in watching those fights, that's not the ZOILA that I have come to be a fan of. So anyway, all that to say is that I watched a couple interviews with her recently, actually in the last couple days. She did an interview with Frank Trigg, and she did MMA Junkie Radio. She looks great. I mean, she's raring to come back, and she's really just so excited and so pumped to show what she can do and what she's capable of. Because she doesn't want people to remember her as the girl who's on a 3-fight losing streak, and that's how she vacated MMA. Unfortunately, she did, but she's back to prove it that that's not really her. So along with her return to MMA, she's returning to the weight class where she had most of her success in her career, which is 115 pounds. She won the Bellator world title at 115. And I say return because during her career, she's kind of bounced around weight classes. She fought at 115. She's fought at 125. She even fought at 135 when she fought the #1 UFC bantamweight contender Miesha Tate. Which brings me to my next point. ZOILA has fought, and for the most part, beat the who's who of MMA. I mean, just run through the list of who she has fought. The majority of the women are in the UFC. Just to name a few: Jessica Ai, Jessica Aguilar, Jessica Penny, Jessica Rakosi. She fights a lot of Jessicas. Interesting. Megumi Fujii, who at the time was considered the #1 in the world. So she's kind of bounced around weight classes, and she's fought the who's who. I mean, she's been around for a while. She fought Rosi Sexton in Bellator, knocked her out. I think it's one of the fastest knockouts in Bellator. I'm not sure, but don't quote me on it. But I mean, she fought Rosi Sexton, who's in the UFC. Knocked her out with a knee. I mean, if you haven't seen that fight, that's an incredible knockout. Rosi came in for a double leg. ZOILA put her left knee up and hit her square in the chin. Rosi was out. I mean, she laid her out. And ZOILA jumped on her and started punching her before the ref could jump in and realize that Rosi's not awake. And it was an amazing knockout. I mean, people to this day still talk about that knockout between ZOILA Frausto and Rosi Sexton. Incredible. So ZOILA fought a lot at flyweight. When she went into Muay Thai, she fought 125 pounds, which is the flyweight division. So for her upcoming fight tomorrow, October 9th, she's back down to 115. And, like I said in those interviews that she did a couple days ago, she looks great. I mean, the weight cut looks amazing on her. She looks happy. She looks relaxed. She looks healthy. The most important, she looks healthy. Because looking back on those Bellator days, some of those weight cuts, I look at her and she doesn't look healthy. That's just my opinion. It was a struggle, I think, for her to get to 115. I'm not sure what her walk-around weight is, but for her to get to 115, she said it does take a lot for her to get down to 115. This weight cut, she said she did it healthy. She's eating the right things, and she's training the right way, and she has nutritionists, and and so she has a lot of support behind her, including CSA Gym, where she trains up in Dublin. So I want to give a shout out to CSA. So, like I said, she looks great. She looks healthy, and she feels ready for this comeback to show everybody why she should not be overlooked, why she's still relevant. Anyway, I'm excited to see her fight tomorrow. Once again, it's October 9th. It's RFA 31, streaming live on Access TV. She's fighting one of the Lybarger twins. She's fighting Jocelyn Jones Lybarger. Once again, it's RFA 31, Resurrection Fighting Alliance 31 in Las Vegas tomorrow, October 9th. And I believe the main card starts at 7 p.m. So if you're a fan of mixed martial arts, check it out. I'm going to check it out. So like I said, I'm super excited for ZOILA Frausto. A lot of us that are her fans have been waiting for a while. I'm super pumped to just see her fight again, MMA, because I love her. She's an amazing fighter, and I'm a huge fan of hers. So that's it for this podcast. Thanks again for listening. I appreciate all the support. I appreciate the views. If you like it, definitely subscribe. I'm going to be doing more of these. If you like it, share it. Give me a like on YouTube. Once again, this is the Women Throwing Leather podcast. I am D. Allen. Thanks again for listening. You're awesome.